Stephanie, and welcome to the Reading Room. This is the playlist where I review what I read in the last month, and I do my best to keep it spoiler-free, or at least I will always warn you if I'm about to spoil something. As I say in all my reviews are solely about the books and not about the authors, so let's dive in and talk about the books that I read in August, even though, as you can see behind me, I am so ready for fall. I mean, I love summer weather, but I'm pretty ready for spooky season and all things pumpkin spice. So to that end, my first book is a nice little horror read because last month was kind of meh. So I wanted to change things up and embrace spooky season. So I kicked off August with a haunted house story, The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. And this read was a chance at redemption for an author whose work I previously hated. I'm going to say I hated. Really hated it. Capital H, hated. I'd heard really good things about Darcy Coates' supernatural books and like her haunting books, so wanted to give her another chance and decided to go with The Haunting of Blackwood House. So let's go ahead and see what this one promises. As the daughter of spiritualists, Mara's childhood was filled with seances and scam mediums. Now, she's ready to start over with her fiancé, Neil, far away from the superstitions she's learned to loathe. But her past isn't willing to let her go so easily, and neither is Blackwood House. When Mara and Neil purchased the derelict property, they were warned that ever since the murder of its original owner, things have changed. Strange shadows stalk the halls. Doors creak open by themselves. Voices whisper in the night. And watchful eyes follow her every move. But Mara's convinced she can't possibly be in danger, because ghosts aren't real, are they? So this was something. Our main character, Mara, she sucks. Was I supposed to hope that she wouldn't be taken out by these ghosts so she could join them in haunting the house as a pissed off spirit herself? She was terrible. I did not care about her at all, which made it hard to feel properly scared when the haunting stuff starts happening. Like, good. Scare her so much that she falls out a window. I did not like her. I did not understand her motivation for some things, and she is one of the worst offenders of the too stupid to live protagonist trope. This girl is lucky that her boyfriend, not her fiance, her boyfriend, has such a good head on his shoulders, or she would not have made it as far in the story as she does. She was so dumb, and it got very annoying very quickly. I don't know what Neil loves about her so much. She's petulant, she's rude, and he is just so perfect and adores her. But I don't get why. Like, you can do so much better, Neil. This also read really YA and really felt basic, and there's nothing wrong with YA. But I expect to have the right expectations going into it, and didn't see this tagged as YA, but Mara just read so young and naive, but she's also supposed to be kind of gruff and like rebuffs people. There were some issues with the tone in this. And the writing. The writing was so basic. I mean, it is a fast read because it's literally, Mara woke up all sweaty. The heater was on. She reached out for Neil, but he isn't there. Right, she sent him away. She sat up and heard a noise. She stood up to investigate the noise. Oh my god, it's just so boring. The haunting scenes were actually decent, so I definitely will give it credit for that. But this really didn't do much to change my first impression of Coates' writing, and I also wasn't really sure where this was set, and saw people saying like mum and kilometer, and everyone is drinking tea, and then I saw that Coates herself is Australian, but we're never really told where this is set. I'm gonna guess Australia, maybe the UK, maybe Canada, I don't know, I really don't. And then there would just be words that were in Australian English, and then American English. Pick a lane and stick to it. I'm sorry. I really didn't like this, and I'm giving it 1 star. The haunting scenes alone earned it that. Everything else was awful. Mara is awful. I don't think, it's been a long time since I've read a protagonist that I hated so much. There's definitely going to be a wine club episode about this book, so I can talk about spoilers. Probably in October, going with the haunted theme. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I did not like that. So next up was a book that was hyped on Bookstagram, and it was a Book of the Month pick, and that is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. So let's see what this one is promising. Early morning, August 1975. A camp counselor discovers an empty bunk. Its occupant, Barbara Van Laar, has gone missing. Barbara isn't just any 13-year-old. She's the daughter of the family that owns the summer camp and employs most of the region's residents. And this isn't the first time a Van Laar child has disappeared. Barbara's older brother similarly vanished 14 years ago, never to be found. As a panic search begins, a thrilling drama unfolds, chasing down the layered mysteries of the Van Laar family and the blue-collar community living and working in its shadow. Moore's multi-threaded story invites readers into a rich and gripping dynasty of secrets. Liz Moore's most ambitious and wide-reaching novel yet, The God of the Woods, is a story of inheritance and second chances, the tensions between a family and a community, and a history that will not let any of them go. So overall, I'm a little conflicted with this one. It was really good, but there were also some major things that impacted my reading experience with this. Overall, this was a really good mystery, but I must stress that it is definitely more of a mystery than a thriller. And it's a slow mystery. I mean, really slow. Like, look how big this guy is. He's a chunk. It read a lot more like literary fiction with like a little mystery twist. And I will say Moore is a very talented writer, and she made it really easy to fall into the story. It was a very compelling story and really easy to pick up. I was always excited to get lost in these woods. And I do think the misdirects and reveals were really done well and well placed, but the pace was a detractor of this. And again, this is a big guy at about 500 pages, and sometimes it did feel like we're just meandering or sharing backstory when it doesn't really have a payoff in the end. I felt the middle was a little too bloated and the ending too thin. I wanted more of a resolution for certain characters. There are also a lot of point of views in this, and at times it got tough keeping track of everyone and all the different timelines. Plus, some of the point of views, while they were interesting, I don't necessarily know if they were necessary. Like, I liked the characters, or I was at least interested in them and wanted to know what they were hiding and what they knew, but some of them weren't needed for the story to play out the way that it did. For so many characters and it being such a big book, I still felt like we could have gone deeper with the characters in order to understand them better. Now, I do wish some of the chapter breaks or changes in point of view were done just a little bit differently, as it felt like every time we were just picking up steam with someone, of course we have to chop it off with a cliffhanger and move on to a different character and sometimes a different point in the timeline, which did make it a bit harder to keep track of everything, as the main timelines are both dealing with disappearances of the Van Laar kids. I also think I was a bit, disappointed with some of the twists/reveals of what happened to certain characters. It kept building and building, and I was so ready for something mind-blowing, and then it was, oh, I see. That's what happened? Okay. It was a little anticlimactic. I know I'm saying a lot of negative things, but I actually did really like this. Moore is a fantastic writer, and I really liked the vibes of this. She's great at creating rich atmosphere and bringing the setting to life. I had no trouble seeing this campground come to life. She also has a knack for weaving in a lot of themes in a very authentic and realistic way. The characters evoke a lot of empathy, even when they're making poor choices. There was real tension as the mysteries ramp up, and we're trying to figure out why two children from the same family have gone missing. I do think, had it been 100 pages shorter and maybe we just had a tighter pace or one or two fewer point of views, this would have been a solid 4, maybe even a 5-star read. As it is, I think it's more of a 3.5-star read for me. There's talent, it's a mood, and our characters are complex, which I liked. It's a good read. It was just a really slow read. But I will definitely give Moore's work a try again in the future, as overall I did really enjoy this. Next up was another Book of the Month pick with Rufi Thorpe's Margo's Got Money Troubles. So let's go ahead and see what this one promised. As the child of a Hooters waitress and an ex-pro wrestler, Margo Millet, M-I-L-L-E-T, I read it as Millet. It's probably wrong, but that's how I'm going to say it. She's always known she'd have to make it on her own. So she enrolls at her local junior college, even though she can't imagine how she'll ever make a living. She's still figuring things out and never planned to have an affair with her English professor. And while their affair is brief, it isn't brief enough to keep her from getting pregnant. Despite everyone's advice, she decides to keep the baby, mostly out of naivete and a yearning for something bigger. Now, at 20, Margo is alone with an infant, unemployed, and on the verge of eviction. She needs a cash infusion, fast. When her estranged father, Jinx, shows up on her doorstep and asks to move in with her, she agrees in exchange for the help with childcare. Then Margo begins to form a plan. She'll start on OnlyFans as an experiment. She soon finds herself adapting some of Jinx's advice from the world of wrestling, like how to craft a compelling character and make your audience fall in love with you. Before she knows it, she's turned it into a runaway success. Could this be the answer to all of Margo's problems? Or does internet fame come with too high a price? Blisteringly funny and filled with sharp insight, Margo's Got Money Troubles is a tender tale starring an endearing young heroine who's struggling to wrest money and power from a world that has little interest in giving it to her. It's a playful and honest examination of the art of storytelling and controlling your own narrative, and an empowering portrait of coming into your own, both online and off. I'll be honest, when I started reading this, I didn't quite get it. Like, Thorpe switches between third person and first person, and I couldn't tell if our narrator was Margo or what exactly was going on. It's kind of fourth wall breaky, but also not. And it took me quite a bit to get used to the whiplash between point of view changes with the same character. I mean, I will say it is unlike anything I've read. I have since read reviews that this has been optioned to be a TV show, and that totally makes sense. I could actually see this being a TV show, but it reads like Thorpe had the option and then had to quickly churn out a novel to create a fan base for the show. And I'm sorry, but she didn't take the time nor care in doing it properly. It was like, what's the fastest way to repurpose this treatment for a TV show and make it a book? Okay, first draft, send to print. The idea itself is interesting and probably will do well on screen, but this is a mess. I think maybe I was also expecting this to be funnier, given that it says it's blisteringly funny. And I think there's some, like a quote. Yeah, a bold laugh out loud funny. This isn't funny. I chuckled. And I think I was amused at times, but I wasn't rolling on the floor laughing. I was actually quite disconnected with this. The idea is fine, but even with having both first and third person point of views in this, I don't understand Margo. I feel like I don't know her or why she does what she does. She has her son because she's never wanted anything so much. She starts an OnlyFans because she's never wanted anything so much. But why? And then she wants to be famous all of a sudden, but doesn't come up with a real plan to get there. And again, I ask, why? Why do you want these things? There really aren't that many emotions from Margo. I started to imagine her like a Westworld robot imitating a human. Her dad had more emotions and made me feel things more than she does. Also, if you're like me and you know very little about WWE or the world of wrestling, you're going to be very confused. Like, her dad is involved in that life and just throws around names and terms as if we're all in on it. I am not, I have no idea what a face or a heel means, and honestly, I'm not going to waste my time Googling it. I already wasted my time reading this. I also think some of the focus on social media is funny, and it's funny in how viral Margo goes without really putting any effort into it. Or I get she put some effort into it, but it's weird. And I can't really talk about it with spoilers. So again, this is also going to get a wine club episode because I'm mad. I'm very mad. I'm just truly baffled by this reading experience. This book kind of just is. It exists. It's there. It's a book. You could read it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend you do that though. 2 stars. And I do want to give a trigger warning of drug use and addiction in this. If those are triggers for you, you may want to stay away. I just not happy. Not happy with that read. So next up was another haunted house / horror story of We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer, and I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing that last name. And my God, this brought me right back to my days of scrolling through No Sleep on Reddit. So let's go ahead and see what this one promised. As a young queer couple who flips houses, Charlie and Eve can't believe the killer deal they've just got on an old house in a picturesque neighborhood. As they're working on renovations one day, there's a knock on the door. A man stands there with his family, claiming to have lived here years before, and asking if it would be all right if he showed his kids around. People pleaser to a fault, Eve lets them in. As soon as the strangers enter the home, uncanny and inexplicable things start happening, including the family's youngest child going missing and a ghostly presence materializing in the basement. Even weirder, the family can't seem to take the hint that their visit should be over. And when Charlie suddenly vanishes, Eve slowly loses her grip on reality. Something is terribly wrong with the house and with the visiting family. Or is Eve just imagining things? So, unlike The Haunting of Blackwood House, this was a really good haunted house book. I got to some scenes before bed and basically had to note my way out of there and put it away. Otherwise, I knew if I kept reading, I was not going to be sleeping that night. It was terrifying. And there's honestly so much like WTF is going on in this house. I do think Kliewer did such a good job with his pacing and ramping up the tension because we jump right into it. And I was worried at how the story would play out since the creepiness does start right away. But he does a really good job of changing the story up and keeping things moving, so that fear was completely unfounded. Also, not only were the scary scenes actually scary, but some of what happens is just kind of infuriating, and I felt it. I was so frustrated right alongside Eve, and that just tells me how powerful and evocative the writing is. Like, I gotta say it, I was immersed, y'all, and you could not pay me enough to go into that house's basement. No, sir. Like, there's a scene where Eve talks about basements freaking her out, and it was so real, because I had that fear as a kid, too. My parents had finished our basement when I was old enough to remember it, and there was one room in our basement that was left unfinished where we just kind of kept all of our crap and our washer and dryer. And there were nights when I was the last one up and using the family computer, yes, the good old late 90s, early aughts, where we all shared one computer and it was in the basement, and I would run up those stairs as fast as I could because I was pretty sure some demon or killer clown was right behind me. I mean, knees to chest, pumping my legs so I wouldn't be terrorized in the basement. And obviously, there was nothing scary going on in my basement. It was very nice. But I was just so sure when the lights were off, something was ready to grab my ankle and keep me there. And Eve describes this fear, and it hit so close to home, and it read so well. This was honestly a book that I just could not put down and had to keep reading, even though I was scared. I love some of the little clues sprinkled throughout, and how I, as the reader, would really have to pay close attention or decode or translate things. This was really a wild ride, and now I'm kind of sad I didn't save it for spooky season, as it's truly perfect for it. I guess I'm embracing Summerween. This was suspenseful, unsettling, and at times totally unhinged, and it just really pulled me in. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It would have been a 5-star read if it weren't for the ending. Don't get me wrong, the ending is good and it really does fit with the book. I just personally didn't like it. So there are clues in the book that I wouldn't have minded a more definitive answer as to like what's really going on here. I'm not mad about the ending as it does work with the like WTF-ery of the story, but I do just think it needed a little bit more. If you're not a fan of ambiguous endings or endings that are open to interpretation, you may not love this because it kind of leaves, it's up to you. It's up to you to figure out what the ending actually means. But all in, I still really like this. Solid 4-star read. Last was a book by an author whose work I've enjoyed in the past, and that's Amanda Jayatissa, and her title, Island Witch. So let's go ahead and see what this one promised. Being the daughter of the village, I'm going to apologize up front. There are a lot of Sinhala phrases in this that I'm probably going to mispronounce, but I will do my best. So being the daughter of the village Kapua, or demon priest, Amara is used to keeping mostly to herself. Influenced by the new religious practices brought in by the British colonizers, the villagers who once respected her father's craft have turned on the family. Yet, they all still seem to call on him whenever supernatural disturbances arise. Now someone, or something, is viciously seizing upon men in the jungle. But instead of enlisting Amara's father's help, the villagers have accused him of carrying out the attacks himself. As she tries to clear her father's name, Amara finds herself haunted by the dreams that eerily predict the dark forces on her island. And she can't shake the feeling that it's all connected to the night she was recovering from a strange illness, and woke up, scared and confused, to hear her mother's frantic cries. No one can find out what happened. So this too was kind of a frustrating reading experience. The premise is great, and I loved visiting Sri Lanka through these pages and learning about the culture, especially during a tumultuous time in its history with the British colonizing it. It does touch on a lot of important themes. It had an unsettling atmosphere, that sense of foreboding, and this was totally set up to be a great gothic horror and an iconic coming-of-rage story. But this book has 2 things working against it that just really hindered my reading experience. We've got a poorly paced plot and a protagonist that I just wanted to slap around. So first, let's talk about the pacing, because my God, the pacing of this. This also was a very slow burn. If I tipped over a jar of molasses, all of it would fall out onto the ground faster than this book's pace. This was really easy to put down, and it wasn't as gripping as I expected a book about demons and witches to be. It's just so slow. Like, I was Miranda Priestley while reading this. By all means, move at a glacial pace. You know how that thrills me. Like, we are just plodding and poking along. The prologue and the last 50 pages are honestly the best part. The rest is just filler. This book is like 360 some pages, and you feel every single page and how slow it is. Then we've got our protagonist. Amara is very naive and kind of just bumbles around for the first 100 pages, so it's not that exciting. She's very sheltered, she's impulsive, and very irresponsible. She also makes some choices that just made me want to scream. She ignores obvious signs, warnings, and red flags. I will say Amara is 18, so I can forgive some of it as she's young. But this is also a different time when she most likely would have grown up a little bit faster, as it's in the late 1800s. So it just felt a bit off that she is this oblivious to things when her father is a demon priest. It read really YA, and again, when it's not marketed as such. If I know going into it that I'm expecting a young adult protagonist, I can lower my expectations. This was not sold to me that way. It was also super, super frustrating that Amara overhears little snippets of damning conversations of what might be going on and never asks or internally thinks it over. Or when she's super close to answers, she's all, I can't bear to hear the truth, and just runs away. Girl, do you want to figure out what's going on or not? I mean, I've already figured out every single twist in this book, and am just waiting for you to catch up. Because everything is so predictable. You know exactly how everything is going to play out. But to tease out the mystery, we have to have the same things happen over and over again, making for a very repetitive, and again, boring middle. Also have to say the dialogue was off in this, and it could just be me being a picky bitch, but I do wonder if some of the conversations were how people would really talk in like the late 1870s. And sometimes the conversations were just so on the nose and obvious, except to our oblivious protagonist. It just, at the end of the day, the conversations read very modern, so a bit anachronistic against the setting. There were also points that I was expecting Amara to whip out her iPhone and snap a pic for Instagram. I gotta say, I ended up skimming in the end, and I was not invested in this. The ending of the book is quite a rush, and had some of the creepiness to it, but it was just way too late to save my rating for this, which came in, sadly, at 2 stars. I'm very hopeful as I read other reviews that said they didn't really like this, but liked You're Invited, which I have rated pretty highly in the past. I did enjoy that. And those same reviewers loved My Sweet Girl, which is still on my to-be-read pile. I'm not writing Jayatissa off, but this was not her best title. I also do want to give some trigger warnings as things are described on page that might be harmful for some readers. There is essay in this, adultery, and a forced rhymes with smishmortion. If those are triggers for you, I would not recommend this read. Okay, so that is everything that I read in August. If you have any recommendations for what I should add to my TBR pile for September, please leave those in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month in the reading room.